Once, in a quiet and secluded town where time seemed to stand still, there was a legend about a ghost in an old cemetery. The locals told terrible stories about a soul that wandered in the night and cursed those who dared to disturb the peace of the dead. The old cemetery was covered in moss and mystery, its old graves hiding the stories of those who had left this world. But on one of the graves a strange light appeared, as if fire from other worlds, and from the depths of the night came eerie sounds and vague whispers. Many considered this to be mere fiction and warned others against visiting the cemetery, but there were always brave men who decided to test the truthfulness of the legend. One such curious one was a young boy named Max. One night at midnight, Max gathered with his friends and set out for the old cemetery, armed with a flashlight and a brave heart. They made their way through the dark alleys, treading carefully on the rotten wooden planks. The wind whispered riddles and warned of the unknown, but Max and his friends paid no attention. When they reached the tomb where the legend says the light appeared, fear struck in their hearts, but their curiosity overcame, and they decided to go inside. Max lifted the lid of the tomb, and a dark underground passage opened before them. They descended the stairs, deep into the darkness. The further they progressed, the stronger the smell of rot and death became. The air seemed to be filled with the souls of the dead, and the walls began to emit a flickering light like the spirit that dwelt here. Finally, they reached an underground room, where they saw the vague outline of a tall figure covered with a black cloak. It was the very ghost rumored to be there. The ghost slowly turned toward them, and his eyes flashed with an ominous fire. He began to approach Max and his friends, making incomprehensible noises that filled the air with terror. Max and his friends froze in fear. They could not move, as if their feet had turned to stone. The ghost drew nearer and nearer, his voice penetrating their ears, making them tremble with terror. He told them the story of his death, of how he had been buried alive in that grave, and of his unsatisfied thirst for revenge. He cursed anyone who dared to disturb the peace of the cemetery and boldly invade his realm. Max and his friends begged the ghost for mercy. They promised never to return to the cemetery again. But the ghost was relentless. He clenched his transparent fists, and a powerful energy emanated from them, making the ground shake under his feet. At the last moment, when the ghost was a few steps away from them, Max and his friends tried to run, but their feet were bound by invisible forces. They fell to their knees before the ghost, ready to accept their doom. The ghost raised his hand and clenched it into a fist. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted, and Max and his friends disappeared into it as if they had never existed. Since then, no one else dared to approach the old cemetery. The legend of the ghost became even more frightening and mysterious. Max and his friends became another story lost in the memory of the townspeople, their fate left unsolved. The story of the horror and mystique of the old cemetery has been passed down from generation to generation, reminding them that it is better to leave peace to those who are buried underground. People, even the most desperate, avoided the place, leaving it to spirits and curses. But one day, many years after Max and his friends disappeared, a new group of explorers decided to investigate the legend and uncover the secrets of the cemetery. They were confident that they could find an explanation and confront the sinister forces that inhabited these places. This group consisted of paranormal investigators who considered themselves impeccably prepared for any horror. They were equipped with special equipment, cameras and sensors, ready to record any unexplained phenomena. They arrived at the cemetery at night, when night shrouded everything around them. Armed with flashlights and cameras, they plumbed the depths of the cemetery, their footsteps echoing through the alleys. Every rustle, every light that penetrated the darkness of the night, made their hearts race. They felt the presence of something invisible, sinister, lurking in the shadows, watching them. Suddenly, one of the group felt his hand grow cold, and the air around him began to freeze. He looked up and saw the figure of a ghost shining in the darkness. It was the same ghost that the legends told of. The rest of the group shrank in terror. Their hearts froze. Their legs refused to listen. They were captivated by fear. The ghost stepped closer, his voice penetrating their brains, making them tremble with terror. He spoke the words. A curse seeped into their ears, for they had dared to disturb the peace of the cemetery, and now they would pay the price for their disbelief. One by one, the band members began to disappear before the eyes of the others. They vanished into the darkness, as if they were swallowed by the night forever. Those left behind witnessed the horror. They realized that the ghost would not give up its evil intent one step at a time. One girl, the last survivor of the group, mustered all her strength and tried to escape. She ran through the dark alleys, but the ghost followed her relentlessly. Its footsteps heard closer and closer. Its breath, cold and sinister, trickled down her neck, giving her goosebumps of terror. At last she reached the exit from the cemetery, but an impenetrable wall of mist appeared before her. She stopped in fright, realizing that the forces of evil surrounded her on all sides. At the last moment, a ghost appeared before her, its eyes glittering with malice and disapproval. The ghost whispered the last words of a curse and melted into the air, leaving the girl alone and desperate. The fog engulfed her, and her screams disappeared into it, as if no one had heard them. The cemetery was now a place no one dared visit. The legend of the ghost and his curse only grew stronger with time, reminding all the living that there are things better left forgotten and not touched by their bottomless secrets. And so, the story of horror and mysticism continues in the old cemetery, where the ghost brings the curse with him, and those who dare to step into his territory inevitably fall into his sinister embrace. Their fates are shrouded in the darkness of their own fears, and the end of their story remains sad and dystopian. People who decide to explore or disturb the peace of the old cemetery disappear without a trace. Their names become only entries in forgotten diaries and half-destroyed records. Those who do survive forever bear the mark of the ghost and his curse. They become tormented souls, deprived of peace and happiness. All their lives, they bear the burden of unspeakable horror and eternal nightmares. Thus continues the legend of the ghost in the old cemetery. Its ominous presence continues to torment the living, reminding them of boundaries that must not be crossed. Therefore, beware of the call of darkness and the evil of the old cemetery. Remember that some secrets are better left buried in the past, and ghosts bring with them incalculable pain and destruction.